President Gorbachev called the president in a last-ditch effort to postpone the beginning of the ground war.
Really an unprecedented phone call of, I think, 83 minutes between the president and President Gorbachev.
And he was quite eloquent in arguing that this we shouldn't do, that this was an entirely new and different step, that it would be enormous bloodshed.
And President Gorbachev at the time was saying, I have no interest and no sympathy for this guy. We're not out to protect him in any way, shape, or form. And we want the same objective you want.
He was sure that he could get Saddam to agree to the necessary terms to end this if we had a little more time, and it's not put down, in fact, an ultimatum. And he kept coming back to it, and the president, gently but firmly put him off. But it was a long conversation, very difficult conversation for the president.
The coalition will give Saddam Hussein until noon Saturday to do what he must do. Begin his immediate and unconditional withdrawal from Kuwait.
The president and I were in the gym at Camp David when a call came from Gorbachev, and we went in there into the men's locker room where he talked for 15 or 20 minutes. And we really felt that we had to stick to an unconditional withdrawal or unconditional retreat.
I think that it was necessary to follow up the ground war. Just pounding and pounding and pounding Iraq soon would have produced a sympathy reaction around the world, and that would not have been in our interest.
Special Soviet envoy Yevgeny Primakov warned the U.S. against starting a ground war.
If this war starts today, then it will be the responsibility of those who started.
The architect of traditional Soviet policy had been Primakov. And so all the time he was looking for a way out. He was looking for a way to preserve the Soviet relationship to Iraq.
He went to President Gorbachev and convinced President Gorbachev that what he was doing was in fact a big favor for everybody. He would spare the United States the cost of a ground war. And I think that they felt, we're going to get Saddam out. We will obviously provide a rule for ourselves. And I think that was kind of the logic of what was going on.
I may be alone in this. I have never believed that Mr. Primakov intended us well in his various trips around the area. I think he represents in many ways the classic Soviet Foreign Office bureaucrat, Middle Eastern expert who in my judgment, his basic intention was in the last analysis to save Saddam Hussein. I think the effort on our side was to persuade the leadership in the Soviet Union they were being had by one of their own. Now, I hope I don't have to deal with Mr. Primakov for a while.
Regrettably, the noon deadline passed without the agreement of the government of Iraq to meet demands of United Nations Security Council Resolution 660. I have therefore directed General Norman Schwarzkopf, in conjunction with coalition forces, to use all forces available, including ground forces, to eject the Iraqi army from Kuwait.
I remember going down at about 3 or 4 in the morning to the military command center to see what reports they had in, and they were still very fragmentary at that point.
Multi-launch rocket systems and 2 full regiments of 155mm howitzers bombarded the region for 23 minutes.
The next morning, Sunday morning, the president had invited a few of us to join him for church services at St. John's, the Episcopal Church just across Lafayette Park from the White House. I attended those services with my wife and daughter. I sat right behind the president, who was in the pew ahead of me, and during the course of the services, I passed him a note saying that the operation was off to a good start. And then right after the church service, he came over, briefed the president that the Marine operation was going much faster than expected, very light casualties. And nothing to do with laser rangefinders or TV cameras or fancy technology. It had to do with brave young kids crawling at night and finding where these mines were, and then laying and hiding all day long. And then the next night, doing it again. And in fact, General Schwarzkopf wanted to kick off the second phase, which was the westward sweep 12 hours early, and I think it was at that meeting the president gave the authorization to go ahead.
The big factor was really the terrain, the troops available, and the enemy. When you looked at the way they were deploying their forces in Kuwait, they had an exposed flank. It was very simple. They had an open flank over there. The more you watched his deployment of forces, the more he was stuffing forces into a bag, for all intents and purposes, called Kuwait, and he was not defending that flank.
It was that deployment of all of that force down there that ultimately made it possible for us to execute the flanking attack, the 7th Corps end around that cut off those forces and destroyed them.
The target here is a T-55 tank, and small arms fire is returned. That's not for long, as the battle group scorches everything in its path. Quite honestly, there was not a lot of resistance left in the theater. And politically, we were just beginning to hear the first calls that you've done it, you've done enough, now don't go on and do too much. Don't get carried away with it. Those Saudi tanks drove deep into Kuwait, halting some 30 kilometers from the capital. While they were diverted by a short gun battle, an American television crew pressed on alone. It was an extraordinary journey which ended in the heart of Kuwait City. This day belongs to Kuwait, a small country devastated, but a nation restored.
We're reaching the climax. And in my discussions with the Secretary and the President, I told them that and said that sometime in the next day or two, we will come and let you know that we've done what you wanted us to do.
They were in complete rout, and I reported that situation to General Powell, and he and I discussed, have we accomplished our military objectives, the campaign objectives? And the answer was yes.
When we return to the Gulf crisis, the road to war, Saddam is defeated and Kuwait liberated.